When you're considering buying a house and you start looking up what your options are, you probably start with a quick Google search, and the results raise new questions. So you might try a mortgage calculator, which only makes things more confusing. So you try a YouTube video, but nothing really addresses all the specifics of your unique situation. You start wishing someone who knew all the answers could just walk through your whole situation with you. Someone who knew your monthly debt and your credit and how you get paid and how much you get paid and how much you have saved up. Someone who could just put that all in a blender and come back to you with all the possibilities. Well, unfortunately, we can't make a video with you in it, but we did try our best to replicate your situation. Hopefully, by watching Matt walk through the exact situation described above with his specific financials, you will get a sense of how it all works and be able to substitute yourself in the story, but it won't be perfect, so if you have any more questions, please comment below. We'll do our best to answer them, and we can even make a video with your specific situation in mind.
Thank you for calling. This is Chris.
Hey Chris, this is Matt. I saw your website. I wanted to give you a call about possibly getting a mortgage. So basically my situation is I have pretty low debt. I don't have student loans or car loans. I have 4 credit cards, which I've paid off and have less than 10% on each. Total is $150 a month on credit card payments. Balance is about $8,000. So I make $80K a year on salary, and I am anticipating a raise to $90 in a couple months. I think I have about a 655 credit score.
So on your income, you said salary. It's actually a salary, base monthly salary?
Yes, yeah, it's actually salary.
And how long have you been doing what you do? What do you do, and how long have you been doing what you've been doing?
I am an engineer,
Okay.
and I have been in my current company for 3 years.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, and about 80K, hopefully only a couple months, 90.
And
That's
then
super helpful.
Last thing is I've got about 75, 80 that I can maybe use all in for down payment and whatever closing costs there are.
Okay, so 75 to 80K all in cash. That's super helpful. What's the highest price point that you've gone to where you said, boy, that'd be great if that could work, sort of a thing? Where's that been?
I'd love to get into about the $650,000,
Okay.
$650,000 range.
Okay. Well, let me just, what you've told me so far, there's no real, alarm bells going off, in my head that says, wow, this is going to be a big challenge. You've got a good job, you've saved some money, you've got a significant amount of money down. We're just using salary. I think you're going to qualify. I mean, I never like to tell people right off the cuff, right off the top of my head. But, nothing you've said so far. Let's say that we put 10% down, which is $60,000, and that gives room for you for closing costs and prepaids to use up the rest. And of course, we don't necessarily use up the entire amount. But let me just run some real, just down and dirty numbers here. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Chris.
Nice to meet you in person. Basically, I've got your file up here, and when we talked yesterday, we talked about kind of your high end, and I always like to start there because a lot, sometimes if you come to me and you tell me this is kind of the most I've looked at, where I thought, boy, if that worked, that would be great, and many times I can look at that, and I can do a quick down and dirty based upon the information you've given me, and we say, oh yeah, you're not going to have any trouble qualifying for that, and that. That starts to frame our conversation. And then sometimes, as our case was yesterday, we kind of took a look at those numbers and we realized, well, actually, that is going to put us beyond our limits that we're probably going to be able to qualify, at least based upon that initial very high level review of your information. And essentially, you talked about FHA. You thought you were going to have to go FHA, yeah. And I talked about maybe going conventional. And one of the essential differences between those two, besides the fact that conventional is almost invariably cheaper. So if you can go conventional, it's usually lower cost money. Right. FHA is a great program if you need it, but it's more expensive money. And so I try and see if people will fit in conventional first. Well, conventional, one of the key metrics that all these underwriting programs look at is called debt-to-income ratio. Okay. And basically what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to take all your monthly, we're going to take your housing expenses, yeah, which includes your taxes, your insurance, any homeowners association dues, any mortgage insurance, all that added up. We're going to divide that by your gross monthly income. And we're going to add on to that any additional monthly payments that you have. In your case, you said you had about $150. And we're going to divide that by your gross monthly income.
Okay.
And if that number is over 50%, then that's pretty much a hard stop for most
So what was
conventional
I at?
programs. You were at about 60%.
Okay.
Based upon interest rates yesterday. Now, the other thing we should do is let's look at the other end of the spectrum. The other question I like to ask my clients when they come in, especially first-time homebuyers, is, okay, as you've gone out there and started to fantasize, what's the lowest price point that you've seen that you thought, yeah, that could work?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
could
sure.
really work.
It doesn't have to be 600. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw some options there in the 500 range.
Okay,
So
yeah.
anywhere in there, I think I'd be comfortable in.
So we're in the 500 to 600. And so, we can quickly say, okay, let's change these to 500. If I change this, and in this case, I'm still going to put 10% down. We can obviously put more down as the payment goes. Right now, the reason I just said 10%, I don't think we can get to 15% down.
Okay.
If we put that, and that would change the pricing. So if we went to 15% down, well, that uses your full 75. That doesn't leave anything left over
Right.
for the closing cost and
So if
whatnot.
you can't get to 15,
So
might as
just
well.
just for pricing
10.
purposes, I'm leaving it at 10 right
Sure.
now.
Okay.
And then I can look at that and say, well, look at this. Now our debt to income ratio is right at 50%.
Yeah.
So we are right on the cusp there where I think we could get you approved. And then that's when I start to say, okay, well, I've only used up here, about 61,000 of your total 75 available cash. So we can lower the loan amount a little bit, bring more cash to close, and probably come in under that 50% debt to income ratio.
Is there just basically, I either get it or I don't, or are there options there of how to
With
get
the loan?
how to
Yeah.
get that loan, which loan to go with?
Well, so
What options there are?
yeah, no, that's good question. So first of all, I didn't have you fill out my application yet. So, and I didn't ask for, or do you have military history
No,
of service,
no,
VA eligibility? Because VA is a little different. In your case, we're going to be capped at that 50% DTI. Now,
Okay.
here's where FHA and conventional differences can make a difference, but FHA is not really going to bail you out here, because FHA. They will allow a cap of up to 57% debt to income ratio.
Okay.
But they use kind of the old school method of bifurcating what they call the front end ratio and the back end ratio. Technically, when you're talking about debt to income ratio, there's the front end ratio, which is just your housing cost divided by your gross monthly income. And then the back end ratio is your housing cost plus any other debt you have, which in your case is that $150 a month. And so FHA, most conventional Fannie and Freddie, most of the time they completely ignore the difference, between the front end and the back end. They just say 50%. I don't care if it's all front end or if it's all back end, or a little bit of front end, all back end. 50%, and we're cutting you off. Anything up to that's fine, assuming the other factors work out.
Yeah.
Whereas FHA will typically, I think, only allow you to go like 47.57. I
Okay.
think is what FHA does.
Okay.
And so in your case, we're already kind of up to 50% debt. If we go back to 600, we're up to 60%. Most of that's the front end ratio. So we're
Okay.
going to be well in excess of our 47% allowance, even though we could go to 57 total if we had other debts. And you have a little bit of other debt, but not enough to really be the difference between the 47 that FHA
Sure.
will allow and then. So in your case, that really is. Those are going to be the options now. If you had
So conventional is basically just
conventional is
normal
going
conventional
it's going to be cheaper and it's going to be better priced.
okay.
It's going to be your maximum qualifying, because they'll let you go fully to 50 on the front
Right,
end, and
right,
I think
right.
you're going to be higher on the front end.
Okay.
We'll keep both in view, because
Yeah.
right now this is preliminary. Let's do another thing. Let's do a little experiment here. Let's assume that your income goes to 90, and let's see what that does.
Right.
Okay, because you mentioned that's how certain of that. How certain are you of that? Is that already been sort of promised to you, and it's just a matter of time when that happens?
Yeah,
or what's your
exactly.
thought there?
It's pretty much guaranteed. It just should be a couple months here.
Okay, so that takes your income to 7,500.
I can qualify with that, even though if I were to buy before the raise.
Potentially, if we got it in writing, there is the allowance of future income.
Okay.
That you can use future income. And so now we're going to go. Let's go to 600,000. Let's Let's go back to 600,000. We're going to put 10% down. Now we see here, we're getting close. We're at 53% DTI. Now, what I'm going to do now is say, okay, what if, and this is where, we talked a little bit about, okay, we're in a market now where,
this is back at 600,000.
yeah, this is back at 600. We're in a market right now where sellers are more willing to deal. Not every seller. I definitely over the weekend had multiple offer situations where we saw prices escalate. So it's not, it's just a market that has a little of both. But the good news is for buyers, there are properties out there that are willing to negotiate. So let's say that we said, okay, we need to buy the rate down. So we need to find a seller that's willing to negotiate, and I want to be up near the $600,000 range. Well, then I can take a look at this and I can go, okay, well, here's my price. You don't necessarily have to understand how all this works, but let's say that I got, $20,000 on a $600,000 listing that's been sitting for a while isn't too much of a stretch. Okay.
Asking for $20,000 off.
Yeah, asking them to pay $20,000 of your closing costs, for example. But let's just say here, let's ask for 15, because I can get all the way down to 5.25 with 15. So let's try and be a little less aggressive.
So that buys the rate down.
That buys the rate down. I generally don't advise that, but in this case, this is not your motivation just to say, well, I think it's a good ROI play to pay more up front and have a lower rate over the future. You're just saying I can't qualify. So in that case, I would say it's a different calculation.
Get me into the house.
Yeah. So
and you're saying the seller might be willing to pay those.
Yeah. So I would say the sellers, if we go from 5.99 to 5.25, so that's 0.75% reduction in rate for 15,000. So let's go to there and let's apply that. Let's apply that there. Now we see that your debt to income ratio. Now we're right up against the limit, but wait a minute, I haven't factored in your, we're going to call this, we're going to call this credit card debt. Revolving is what the term of art is, and it's going to be various. And you said about 8,000 that you owe, and the monthly payment is 150. Okay, so save. So now we see here, and this is where we can talk. Here we see that that kicks us a little bit over the limit. We're at 52% debt to income ratio. Now let's do a couple of things. First of all, I want to go in here and put, we're going to apply our seller credit here of 15,000. We're going to assume here that we're going after a property that the seller is willing to pay. We're going to pay 15,000 or 600,000, but the seller is willing to pay 15,000 toward our closing costs, and we're going to use that to buy the interest rate down to 5.25. So now we're down at 5.25, and so you see here. Well, now we're at 72,000 cash all in on this scenario that we've just worked out. You said you had upwards of 75, right?
Right.
Upwards of 75.
Maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah, and this is where we might take a look at this and say, well, look, the difference between you getting this house and not getting this house is that $8,000 of credit cards that you have out there, because that takes your back end ratio from your front end ratio here is 49%. That's just your housing cost.
Yeah.
Divided by your gross monthly income. But when I add that extra 150 in to that $90,000 salary, now I'm at 51% debt to income ratio.
Sure.
So if I just pay off that $8,000 of credit card debt, now we're back under 50%.
Okay.
And you qualify now.
So that's where I put the cash, not just into the down payment. You would recommend paying off those?
Yes.
Credit cards?
I mean, you're probably going to find that using that full 8,000 to pay down the loan amount lower would be less impactful than.
Yeah.
Now here's the other thing. Don't do that now.
Okay.
There's no reason for you to do that now, because we still don't have a specific loan scenario.
Okay.
And it's always good. You can always do it later. You can't get that cash back later.
Right.
If you need that 8,000 for something different down there, the real situation, where you go and find the real property, and whatever the myriad of negotiating, elements, you might want that 8,000 available. Okay. So here's the deal. I mean, right now we're talking about a future raise.
Yeah.
And we're smack up against the limit. We're a few more
That's
dollars,
and we're looking at 600, right?
Yeah.
Which is the upper end of what I was looking at.
So I would say, I mean, I wouldn't go out looking at 600s, or at
Okay.
least that'd be I wouldn't walk out of here saying, okay, I'm qualified for 600.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I would go out of there saying, I might be able to get to 600 because rates could change tomorrow. They could get a little bit worse, or maybe they get a little bit better. And so, and the other thing too is we use rules of thumb for property taxes. Well, that's a pretty big number. That's, in this case, my rule of thumb says $450 a month. You may go find a $360,000 property. I mean, a $600,000 property that's only $300 a month,
Okay.
of real estate taxes, or it could be, $600 a month.
Okay.
And so, as you go out, what I would definitely advise you as you go out and start to find properties before you go out, just when you see them and you go, boy, I'm kind of interested in that, send them to me.
Okay.
And that'll do two things. One, I can pull real property taxes and real numbers, but I can do real-time interest updates. And then we just have to be very clear if we're going to be relying on that future income or not.
Yeah.
Different programs underwrite future income differently. And so some of them require you to have reserves, some of them don't. So we just want to be very clear about what we're doing before you go in and write an offer on something like that.
Okay.
I think that's a great start. Be fastidious about making all your payments on time. Don't fall behind on those things. Don't spend your cash. Keep your cash. Your cash is super valuable right now.
Yeah.
Or at least reach out to me before you do. And and then just ping me when you have properties out. You will need to apply if you're going to actually go out and engage with a realtor and go start shopping. You want to be ready to move at any moment, because even though it is not the same market as it was a year ago, it's still a market where any property could be gone at any time. And so you want to be ready to move on if you find the right one. So you'll want to fill out my application. We'll pull your real credit. We'll verify your income and assets, because it's super important that if I have to call a listing agent and say, hey, I've talked to Matt, I've verified his income, his assets, I got him pre-approved, we're ready to go, I can confidently speak to my ability. I can also potentially close faster once we've done all those things. And that can be compelling to a seller. So for all those reasons, we'll make sure that we get you going here.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you bet.
Sure.
Thanks, Matt.
None of the rates seen in this video are advertisements or necessarily available. At the time this video was made, these rates were relevant comparisons to be able to use in this scenario.